Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Second Cup with Keith. I am your host, Keith Giles, and I am glad to be back with you again. I know it's been a while. I pretty much took the month of August off, and I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize for that. I just needed to take the break. And I do want to talk a little bit, though, about why, a little bit, I guess, about some of the background about why I took a little bit of a break, and hopefully an announcement about moving forward with this podcast, because I would like this podcast to become a little more of a regular thing. And if I can, at least every other week, record a new episode. I would say this Choircast podcast is brought to you by my book, The Quantum Gospel of Mary and the Lost Gospel of Truth. It's been out for a couple of months now. It's done very well. I actually have a publicist working right now to help me spread the word about that book, as well as the previous book in the series, The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, Decoding the Lost Gospel of Thomas. It's just really the topic of quantum theology as well. So that's kind of what I'm going to be focused on moving forward. And hopefully I can do that more and more. At this moment, I am in the middle of writing my weekly Inner Circle series. Right now we're going through the Quantum Gospel of Philip, which of course will be that will eventually become a book. What I realized, though, is that it's taking me so long, and I added it up. I think there's something like 60 or something, 67 something sections of Philip that I would pull out as individual, weekly posts, and which would also then become individual chapters in the book. And so if I only do one a week, that's 60 something weeks. That's over a year. You understand? Like there's only 52 weeks in a year. So if there are 67 weekly posts still left to go and 60 something chapters left to go, if I only write one a week, yeah, it's going to take me more than a year to finish the Quantum Gospel of the Quantum Gospel of Philip book. And that's too long because what I would really like to do is release another quantum theology book in the first quarter of next year. So like March, April, maybe in May, first or second quarter of next year. And so since it's looking like the Gospel of Philip book will not be ready in time, unless and I can do this. I kind of did this with the Gospel of Thomas book, the Quantum Sayings of Jesus, where I recognized it was taking 114 sayings was going to take me a long time. And I just kind of, spent time doing 2 or 3 sayings a week, working on the book to get the book done. And I could do the same with the Gospel of Philip. But I had an idea for another quantum theology book, and I'm very excited about it, and I've outlined it. Actually, I have the outline right here. If you're watching on video, this is the outline, and that's the quantum. I think I'm going to call it the Quantum Gospel of Paul, or the Quantum Sayings of Paul. Well, we'll see. It's one or the other. So what I realized is that there are quite a few sayings that Paul has that point to this quantum theology, right? And when I was first thinking about this as a book, I was thinking of it like, well, because off the top of my head, I can only think of about 6 or 7 um, things that Paul said that are, to me, very obviously sort of quantum focused. In other words, pointing at our shared divinity and shared humanity, our oneness, right? There's in quantum science, there's only one thing, and that's the quantum field. In quantum theology, there's only one thing, and that is the Christ. And so I was looking for sayings like that from Paul. And again, off the top of my head, I only had 6 or 7. But the interesting thing is that when I sat down to actually, look at Acts, Romans, Galatians, First and Second Corinthians, First and Corinthians, Philippians, and of course Ephesians and Colossians. What I realized was there's a lot. I got pages and pages of of verses, excerpts from Paul's epistles and letters that pointed to this idea. So it was very exciting because I was like, wow, this was a much bigger deal for Paul and in the writings of Paul than I first even suspected. Like, it's not a minor part of Paul's theology. It's a pretty big part of Paul's theology. And so, I got very excited about that. I outlined the book. And so that's my plan, is to start working on the book, The Quantum Gospel of Paul, and have it finished by, in time to publish in February, March, April, something like that, of next year. That's the plan. And then, of course, the Gospel of Philip would come then at the end of next year, about a year from now, kind of a thing. August, September, October, November, something like that. So that's the plan, and I wanted you to be aware of that. But that's not the main thing I want to talk to you about today. I published a blog today as I'm recording this. Recording this September the 15th, 2025. And I really woke up yesterday with this in my head. And I wrote it, sat down at the computer. I wrote this, and I initially published this on my Patreon page. So my Patreon subscribers got to read this first, kind of fresh off the top of my head. But it really establishes kind of where I'm at right now and where I really hope to go in the future. And I will apologize in advance for, you'll get, I guess you'll get to hear it as, because I want to read through and I don't want to read it verbatim, the blog post, but I do want to kind of touch on certain different points that I make in the blog post, because it has a lot to do with what I'm going to be trying to focus on going forward, and a bit of a confession and an apology about where I've been and what I've been doing for the last few months. And so, yeah. The post on my blog is, which is keithgiles.com, is I titled it "Making All Things New" with a question mark. And I will read the opening part, because this is the part that I kind of had in my head that was really the genesis for the whole article, and the whole change of focus and mindset that I had over the weekend. And so, I'll start off with that. I'll just read the first couple of paragraphs. I say, I know it doesn't seem like it, but the universe is always conspiring to draw humanity together. And I believe that. The opposing force that resists this process is our own animal instinct, our senses, what we see and hear, taste and touch, our tribalism, and especially our ego. And again, I want to confess that lately I've kind of fallen asleep. And we have a tendency to do that. Thomas talks about this. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas is constantly saying that we should wake up, we should stand up, we should open our eyes. These are things you do when you are awake, because you've fallen asleep and you've forgotten. You've fallen back into the illusion of separation. And I'm going to confess that I've done that I've allowed my animal instincts to pull me deeper into the process of resisting the awareness of oneness. And as a result, I've forgotten to focus on building the new. And if you've been following this podcast or my blog for the last couple of years, I think, and that's depressing to think that it's been a couple of years that I've been talking about this. Socrates has this quote, right, that has been so inspirational to me, but maybe not inspirational enough. This idea that, the secret of change is to not focus on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I have resolved myself to abandon fighting the old already in the past. This is not the first time I have made any sort of a declaration that from now on, I will no longer spend my time and energy fighting the old. I will focus all of my time and all of my energy on building the new. And that was coming from a sincere place and a good place and an aspirational desire that I had to do exactly that. That's definitely what I wanted to do. It just didn't work out. It's not as easy to do that as I thought. It's much easier to fall back asleep and to fall back into those same old habits. And so I did that. I fell back into that bad habit of fighting the old and using the same very familiar tools and resources and weapons and tendencies that I have that are very these ingrained native things in me that pull me back into an us versus them tribalism. And I admit that I've done that. Something else that I say in the post that was part of my little aha moment this past weekend was recognizing that the us and them, and specifically the us and them for me anyway, is centered on politics, right? The progressives versus the conservatives. And if you follow me online, especially if you follow me on Instagram or on the God Squad Facebook group, even though I'm no longer a part of the God Squad, I've just continued. And again, the reason I left the God Squad, the reason I stepped away from the God Squad was so that I wouldn't be tempted to get sucked into this us and them political tribalism. But it didn't do the trick. I still continued to be very triggered and focused and distracted by this us and them political tribalism. So since that is the root of my personal struggle, what I realized was that both conservatism and progressivism, and those are codes for conservatism is a code for Republicans or MAGA or whatever. Progressivism would be code for Democrats, liberals, again, the blue and the red sides of the coin. But what I realized is that both conservatism and progressivism are attempts to bring humanity, I believe, like subconsciously, I think, whether you are a conservative, and I used to be one, or progressive, that subconsciously, what you're hoping to do is to bring humanity back to some kind of oneness. Now, it's misguided because it's a oneness that's only about agreement on these political issues and ideologies. Nevertheless, I do think that underlying progressivism and conservatism is a desire to bring us to a place of unity. Now, they both sides, the mistake they make is to employ these primitive methodologies to accomplish what they can sense intuitively we need to do, which is to all come together under some kind of umbrella, right? The conservative strategy is to take us back, right? To really an imaginary world where everybody was supposedly happy and content under the banner of this agreement on theology and politics and ethics and morality, right? And how that is narrowly defined. Now, the progressive strategy, I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute, but just for the contrast, for the back and forth. The progressive strategy to bring us all together, right, under some umbrella, is to move us forward into an equally imaginary world where everyone finds peace through this abundance of resources. Like if we just shared our resources and we had better education and again, ultimately shared ideologies. And I would say that neither is necessarily wrong, at least when it comes to a desire to bring humanity together. What they're misguided in is their attempts to accomplish that. And that I think that's due to an ignorance about where humanity is going and also about what we truly need to find oneness, to find unity as a humanity. And again, I think I've seen the answer to this problem, but I've been distracted. I've allowed myself to believe that I could do both, that we could bring, humanity, which currently is divided into progressives and conservatives, but could also be divided into Christians and atheists, or Muslims and Hindus, or you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many ways to divide us. And again, I really do feel like this quantum theology, this quantum reality, is what cuts through the noise. It is the only thing that will really work. I do believe that. I've not stopped believing that. But I've fallen asleep, and I've allowed myself to become distracted by focusing on the us and them, how right I am, and people who think like me are, and how wrong they are, the people that don't see it the way I see it. And then that sucks you into a focus on solving a problem that ultimately you're solving the wrong problem, and you're solving it the wrong way. And the way you're trying to solve it will never solve it. Never solve it. So, but the irony is that the conservatives desire to achieve unity by saying that we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to something. In a way, that's not wrong. I think in a way that's right. The problem is they don't understand what we need to go back to. It's not going back to the good old days. Like, oh, remember the 50s or the 40s or the 1800s or whatever, whatever nostalgic kind of time you're going to say was the ideal society. So that's, what you're going back to is not the right thing to go back to. But I think what we need to go back to would be our original consciousness. That I think even as children, we had an original, sense of consciousness about oneness. We were aware of our oneness with God and our oneness with everyone. And then over time, we get taught by our senses, by our tribalism, by our parents, by our society, to fall into these tribalistic ways of thinking and separation, etc. Right? But I do think before we get indoctrinated that way, that we as babies, as infants, as very small children, before someone has kind of brainwashed us this way, we do understand that we're one. We do understand that God is not separate and that we're not separated from anybody else, right? You have to be taught things like racism. You have to be taught tribalism. You have to be taught xenophobia. It's not inherent to the human being. I don't believe that. And so in a way, conservatives are right that we have to go back to something, but what they don't get is we have to go back. What we have to go back to is original innocence, and like which was why Jesus says, unless you change and become like little children, let it go back to the way you were before people indoctrinated you this way, before people convinced you. You could say you need to wake up, but you could also say you just need to go back to that childlike sense of wonder and awe and curiosity. And incidentally, an original awareness of oneness and connection. And I would say also that progressives are right in a way about this idea we need to move forward in some way. In other words, like where we are now is not, it's the ideal is not the way, is not the status quo. That we have to resist the status quo, and we have to move forward into something else. And I would say that they're right about that. But what they're wrong about, what they don't understand, is that what we need to move forward into is, again, this awakening of our shared divinity and our shared humanity. And they're close. Both sides have the potential, even within their own tribalistic systems. The clues are there for them, right? So for conservative Christian Americans, they have this thing called the Bible that they really almost worship. And you can find the words of Jesus and the words of Paul pointing you to this radical sense of oneness and connection. It's right there. All they would have to do is have eyes to see and ears to hear and go, oh my gosh, there it is, right? And progressives would also have it as well, not necessarily through religious text or anything, but through, again, their whole thing is science and education. And, well, quantum science is telling you the same idea, that we're all connected. And both of them are so close to it, but they're so blinded by their ideology and their methodology that they can't see it. And again, I was a conservative and I couldn't see it. And now that I'm a progressive, I have to fight really hard to continue to see it. Even though I have seen it, I have to fight really hard to keep focused on it. It's just really, really challenging, no matter which side of this you're on, which flavor of tribalism you are currently addicted to. It just makes it really difficult to stay focused on and stay awake to this idea of oneness and connection, right? So, yeah, the truth is that going back to the way things used to be will not awaken humanity to oneness. That's not the way it's going to happen. And why? Because this strategy is based on the false assumption that an artificially imposed set of laws and rules will somehow lead to any kind of inner transformation of the heart, right? We cannot legislate our way to unity or to awakening. And we also can't find oneness by providing just education and resources to everyone who needs them. And again, not that that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. People need education. People need resources, right? We should take care of people. We should care about the needs of people who don't have everything they need. So it's not a bad thing. But the truth is that once you provided great education and all the resources to everyone on the planet, we'll all be well educated and might have more abundance, but we would still not be aware of our need for the other and necessarily of our shared divinity and our shared humanity, right? Awakening to that oneness. But I do believe the truth is that we are already one. And we can't see it because we're so divided. But it's still true. Even in our division, we are still one, because from a quantum physics perspective, everyone and everything is an expression of the one thing, the quantum field. From a quantum theology perspective, everyone and everything is an expression of the same thing, Christ. Christ is all and is in all. And we are filled with the fullness of Christ who fills everything in every way, as Paul says. So when I look at you and I see an expression of reality that doesn't look like me, I assume you're not the same as me. And that's the most basic illusion. That's why our senses lie to us. And that's why these ideologies distract us. It's the most basic illusion. And we assume that those who look like us and sound like us and believe like us and are our quote unquote tribe, and then, that's our tribe. And so then, but again, that seems good because you're recognizing what you have in common with certain people. But the problem is that you are limiting that to only people that agree with your ideology, only people that look like you or sound like you or whatever. And so that's the flaw of tribalism, is that it's too limiting. Your tribe needs to be all humanity, right? And I think Jesus was trying to get us to see this, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Samaritan, he says to the Jew, right? Love the Roman who's oppressing you. Love your enemy. Because why? They are you. It just keep pushing and expanding that recognition that you see in the face of the other person. Look for more than just, do they agree with my theology? Do they agree with my politics? Were they born in the same country? Do they read the same holy book? Whatever, right? Jesus and Paul both are saying, no, it's everyone. It's the world. It's everyone. That's the family of God. Those are the children of God. We are the people of God, right? So forming tribes around race and religion and ideologies, right, it ends up excluding. That's the problem. That's the exclusionary thing. What we need is a unity and a tribe that excludes no one. And so I talk about in the blog post, and which I've used this before. I've used this analogy before in my books on deconstruction. This analogy of George Carlin. George Carlin, the comedian, has a little bit that he does where he says, have you ever noticed that people on the freeway driving faster than me are insane, and people driving slower than me are morons? And that's funny because we all do that. We all think that. But understand, there's an underlying, he's pointing out an underlying human tendency and flaw that we all have, which is to judge other people based on ourselves as the standard. So whatever I'm doing, and in this analogy, it's driving on the freeway, at whatever speed I'm driving, doesn't matter what speed I'm driving, I will judge people who drive faster than me as being insane, and anyone driving slower than me as a moron. And what I'm saying, I would never probably say it out loud. I would never say it this way. But with that mindset, I am admitting, I am acting as if I'm living under the assumption that whatever I am doing is normal. Whatever I am doing, right, is the standard. And so you make yourself the standard for truth, make yourself the standard for behavior or ideology or the ways of thinking and behaving. And therefore, anybody slightly ahead of you, they're insane. And anybody slower than you, hasn't caught up yet, they're morons. And again, that's the wrong way to think. And again, I'm saying, I think I've done that. Even though I know that, even though I've taught that, even though I've used that analogy, I know this is wrong and we shouldn't do that and I shouldn't fall into that trap. I have fallen into that trap. And so, yeah, I found myself over the last couple of months being drawn back into this us versus them mindset. And I want to do what I can to continually, daily break out of those patterns. I want to stop seeing people who think differently than me as the enemy. I want to stop focusing on how wrong they are and being outraged at how annoying they are or frustrating they are, right? Focusing on them being either insane or morons in that analogy. I want to stop being obsessed with cheering and crowing and celebrating when somebody in my perceived tribe gets it right, has a great point. Aha, look at that. That's right. Oh, yeah, look at that. Whoa, yeah. Man, that's hard to do. It is really hard to do. Much easier said than done. So again, going back to Socrates, again, I do believe that he's right. That the secret to change is to focus not on fighting the old, but building the new. I just wish that when Socrates said that, he had somewhere mentioned how incredibly difficult that is to do. How difficult it is for someone like me to stop fighting the old, especially if you've been doing it for a very long time. If it's become second nature to you. I feel like it's actually, I feel like it's an addiction that I need to recover from. And I'm not 100% sure how to do it simply because I haven't done it yet. I'm admitting I haven't done it yet. I am still driven by those things. I still have an addiction to falling into that us and them thing, especially when it comes to politics. But I think here's some ideas that I have. One way I think I can break my addiction to fighting the old is I've recognized how much social media plays into this for me. And so I think maybe limiting my social media screen time would help me, right? Just keep on scrolling past those political posts, right? The horrible thing that the president said that you can't believe. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. Stop being outraged by that. Stop allowing yourself to be outraged by that. Or even, honestly, surprised. Is anyone surprised at this point? No. It's just another day, another stupid thing, another triggering thing that sucks you in. And also stop, reading the post where someone on your side gets one over on the other side, makes a great point, points out something, man, drop the mic. That was great. That was killer. You want to share that with everybody and tag everybody and just like, look at this. Yeah. See. And then again, you're playing into the S and them and I shouldn't say I. When I do that, I'm playing into the S and them and I am fanning that addiction. Honestly, just say it. It's an addiction to outrage at the other side and an addiction to, dunking on and celebrating the victories on someone scores points on our side, right? So I think for me, that's something I need to do. And I'm trying to do that. I'm already working on that, right? Where the first thing in the morning, I don't grab my phone and spend hours on the phone. Scrolling through Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And if I do, because eventually I will, right? I mean, it's not like I'm going to go a whole day without it. But when I do pick up the phone or go look at Facebook or Instagram or whatever, I'm resisting the temptation to share things in either direction, things that outrage me or things that validate me. And honestly, I'm just trying not to even read them. Like I know they're there, and I know what it's going to say. I know what it's saying. I can summarize. It's either going to be the validation or it's going to be the outrage. So that's one idea. That's one thing I'm going to try to do more and more. Another one, and this is, I think, really, really key, is to spend more intentional time in meditation. To really, here's the thing. I used to really do this a lot. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would take time a couple times a week to, unplug myself from everything, put my phone away, go into another room, shut the door, and close my eyes and focus on my breathing and meditate on the love of God and my connection with God and the oneness with God. And it's really great, by the way. I love it. It's not a chore. It's not, it's not a bad thing at all. It's not a difficult thing to do. In fact, once you start doing it, it's actually hard to stop, right? That's an addiction I should cultivate, an addiction to meditation, because it really does just make puts everything in the universe back into perspective again. Just reminds me of my oneness with God. Like, yes. There, because God is just right there. A few seconds into the meditation and like, yep, there it is. And God's, it's not like God is suddenly there. It's like God has always been there. I haven't been aware of it. I haven't been focused on it, right? And then pretty quickly after, really fully, immersing myself in the realization of my connection with God, this God of love, I recognize my connection with everyone and everything else. And so I really need that. And I got away from it. I guess I felt like I didn't need it so much, and maybe that was the mistake, on the one hand, I don't want anything to become, and I counsel people against this kind of thing, right? Don't find yourself being involved in spiritual practices that turn into things you do religiously, right? Where you do it because you kind of feel like you're supposed to do it and you have to do it. And, and I don't think we should ever do religious things for those reasons. And so sometimes maybe you should take a break, right? If you feel like, yeah, I'm just going through the motions here. Okay, take a break, but don't take a long break like I did. Like, don't take a break for like a couple of years and then replace it with something else. I would say take a break for a week or two and then get back to it. If you can, right? If you can do it in a way that you recognize that what you're doing it for is not, again, some sort of you have to, or you're supposed to, or you should. But going back and recognizing that, this is something you're doing for your own emotional, spiritual well-being. So, yeah, that's what I think it would be very important. Listen, again, these are things just for me. So that's what I'm going to try and do. And I guess what I'm trying to say as well, and I say this in the blog, is that, I want to apologize. I don't know why I feel like I'd have to apologize. Like, what do I have to apologize to you for this, right? Maybe I'm just apologizing for myself, to myself. Like, Keith, I'm sorry that I've wasted so much time focused on these wrong things and allowing myself to be distracted. Because I've wasted my own time, and I'm sorry that I've become distracted by this us and them illusion, and I've allowed myself to get pulled into this back and forth thing. And I'm really sorry that I've wasted time that I could have been focused on building the new and to hopefully communicate and inspire other people to pursue this idea of oneness and connection. That's what I want to do. I really don't want to spend time focusing on fighting the old anymore. And again, but I've said that before. And I did it for a while, but then I got sucked back in. So I just want to admit, I know that wanting to stop doing something doesn't automatically mean you will, right? I would love to stop cold turkey. I wish it was a switch. I could just throw the switch and it would be turned off and it would go away. I want to stop being triggered by what they are doing and what they are saying and what, I want especially to stop feeling helpless to change the world around me, because honestly, that's a big part of what I experience the more I get pulled into the us and them thing, the more I feel helpless. And that starts to, that frustration, that helplessness starts to fuel, I don't know, just some kind of a frenzy, right? You feel like you're drowning. You feel like you have no agency, no voice, no power. And it just makes you want to rage all the more. But I think that's the clue. Like, doing that, there is no power in that. And you are kind of wasting your time doing that. You're not changing anything by doing that. So maybe that's a clue for me, anyway, that I should abandon that. If I find myself again getting pulled back in that direction again, like, That feeling of helplessness is your inner intuitive voice telling you, this is a waste of time. This is not going to move the needle, Keith. This will not change anything. So, yeah, using these old tools and these old methods, this us and them methodology, it's only going to drive us further and further apart. It's going to create more and more polarization. And I want to begin building the new. I want to start pointing to the light. I want to start inspiring hope for the way we could be and how to get there. I say this in the blog, I want to show everyone the way out of this tangled maze of division, but I can't do that if I'm trapped in that maze myself. Going back to my way back, my very first book with Choir was Jesus Untangled, right? And it was all about like Christian nationalism and all that. Writing to the Christian church and to Christians, like a warning of the dangers of being involved in politics. That was my whole thing, was like, don't get sucked into politics, because this is not the kingdom and this is not the way to solve the world, to solve the problems and to change the world. That the way to do that is this transformation through our connection with Christ. And I had made a meme at the time. I said something like, I think I say this in the book, but I made a meme specifically to point this out. It said something like, you can't convert a system if that system has already converted you. And what I realized is, like, that's still true. I cannot convert this system of tribalism if I'm still behaving like someone who is fighting for his tribe against the other tribe. And yeah, it kind of comes back around to me like, yeah, that's not going to work. I cannot convert this system of us and them as long as I'm still thinking and behaving as someone who is being wrapped up in and manipulated by this illusion of us and them. It just can't work. So it ultimately, it's about abandoning this tribalistic mindset to really just break that addiction to this us and them way of thinking. And again, what I'm realizing is it's not an easy thing to do. It may be the hardest thing I've ever done. At least I know it's not something I've ever done. I haven't done it yet, right? I see that it's the problem. I see it's a weakness that I have. I see that it's a distraction. I see that it does not accomplish anything, that it's empty, that it's a powerless pursuit. Doesn't mean that I won't find myself doing it anyway, right? Getting pulled back into it. So I know it's not going to be something that'll happen overnight. I mean, at least now I am painfully aware of the fact that it'll take more than a blog post. It'll take more than a podcast. It'll take more than a momentary, aha moment of like, man, I've been doing this wrong. I need to get back to the right way. I need to get back on the right path, right? It takes more than that. It takes staying on the path. And I think the addiction analogy is really, really true, right? I almost feel like maybe I should go to a 12-step group or something, just to remind myself like this, I do have an addiction. This is not easy. How do people break addictions, right? Well, they wake up every day and they take one day at a time. They admit that they can't do it. They admit that they are an addict, that they have this problem. And they resolve to just like, I'm going to try today not to do that thing, whether it's drinking or if it's a sexual addiction or if it's any kind of compulsive behavior. I'm just going to try to get through the day one day and not do it. And then tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll try and get through another day and not do it. And then I'll try the next day, wake up the next day and try to get through the next day and stay sober, right? Stay away from this behavior, this thing that I think is not good. And it's very destructive. And again, look, please hear me. I'm not saying if you're doing those things that you're bad and you're an addict and you're destructive, right? Please don't hear me say, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about myself, right? Someone who says I'm an alcoholic and when I drink, bad things happen and it's ruining my life and I need to stop doing it. They're not saying you should stop drinking, right? Because not everyone who drinks has this problem. And maybe this is, maybe other people are different than me. And I'm sure they are in certain respects, right? I don't know. If you're resonating with what I'm saying, then maybe this is, this applies to you. I'm just telling you what I'm realizing, right? So it's going to take a daily intention to break these old habits and to create new habits. And so I want to, I resolve to, I can say like I resolve to, but we all know about what happens with resolutions, right? I'm just going to say I'm going to do my best to get through today. Not getting pulled into these voices that validate my ideologies. I'm going to try and get through today, ignoring my addiction to this rage against the people who are so wrong. And I want to try to get through today focused as much as I can on my connection to God and my oneness with everyone that I come in contact, that I interact with, or that I talk about, or that I watch, or that I listen to, or that I come across on social media. To remember I am one with this person on at least a level of shared divinity and shared humanity. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to get on here and talk about today. I don't know if you resonate with any of that. If you do, please let me know. I'd love to hear your comments on that. You can leave comments. So if you like and subscribe to whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, Podbean, I guess there's Apple, Amazon, Spotify. You can rate and review and leave a comment. I think if you would leave the comment on Apple, that's the main place that I go and look to see people. Thank you, by the way, for people that have left comments. And if I post a link to this episode on Facebook or something, you can comment there, or on YouTube, you can comment there, and I will see those comments. I'd love to know what you think. And so, yeah, I'd like to, going forward, I've got an idea for another episode of Second Cup that it's been sitting on my desk here for about a month or so. I wanted to say some things about reincarnation that came out of a conversation I had with someone, with a couple of people a few months ago. It was very interesting. It answered some questions I personally had about this idea of reincarnation, which again, I'm not 100% sold on either way, but it was an interesting conversation. It was interesting observations and questions and things that I want to share with everybody. So that's probably what I'll do in the next episode coming up of Second Cup. But again, I want you guys to, I want this to be feedback, right? It's Second Cup with Keith. So it's you as the listener, and here I am with my cup of coffee. And that's how this podcast started, was just, me having my second cup of coffee in the morning and having some things I wanted to share with you. And so I'd like to know what you think. If you have any thoughts you want to add to this dialogue, what I'm saying. If you have questions, maybe there's questions you'd like me to answer, or there would be even topics that you'd like to see me cover on this podcast. And you know the kind of things I talk about on this podcast. So if there's anything I haven't talked about yet and you'd like me to talk about it, I'd love to hear it. That's one of the things that will really help this podcast, I think, to grow and to continue. If it is something that we have a communication back and forth. Like, there are things that come to my mind, but there are things that, maybe you're thinking about that you're like, hey, Keith, could you answer this? Or Keith, what do you think about that? Or Keith, have you heard about this or that, or read this book or seen this documentary or whatever, right? That's the kind of fuel that I need when I sit down here to talk, especially if I know I'm talking about something that you as the listeners care about and want to know about. So yeah, if you don't follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram mainly. I do have a YouTube channel as well. You can find me there on YouTube. Of course, my blog is keithgiles.com. So you can follow me there. If you don't subscribe to the weekly Friday Inner Circle posts, you can do that on keithgiles.com. You can also do that on my Patreon. I would actually recommend, I prefer if you're going to do one or the other, because either way, you're going to get the weekly Friday Inner Circle post. I post it in both places. So if you go to Patreon and you support me for, I think it's $5 a month, you'll get those weekly Friday posts, as well as everything else that I post there. So I post things above and beyond that. As I said at the beginning, I posted this blog post the day before I posted it on my blog for everybody. And I also do a weekly newsletter over there called Imperfect Signals, where I just kind of let you know what's on my mind, what's going on in my life, what's happening with different projects I'm working on, books that I'm reading. I talk a lot about books that I'm reading or movies that I've watched or, things like that. So, if you want that inside scoop, if you're curious about any of those things that I do and, what do I do on a daily basis and what's going on in my life, what makes me tick, you can follow me on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/Keith Giles. I think it is. I think it's patreon.com/Keith Giles. But if you search Keith Giles over on Patreon, you'll find me. You'll see my face and all that. So, and I would really appreciate it because I do still depend financially on the wonderful supporters that I have on Patreon who help me pay my rent every month. Because this is what I do. I'm a full-time author, podcaster, blogger. I do a tiny bit of creative of copywriting for clients, but not as much as I used to. I think AI is kind of killing all that. And so, yeah. And yes, I am co-owner of Quire Publishing, but Quire Publishing is, it's growing. It's good. I mean, it's good to see. It has over the last 2.5, going on 3 years now, since Matthew DiStefano and I took over. It has been growing. It's been doing well. But it's still not at a place right now that it's capable of sustaining Matthew or I financially. I hope it would be wonderful if one day we could get there. Wouldn't that be great? But we're not there yet. So I do very much appreciate the people that support me on Patreon, also that buy my books and read my books and things like that. So thank you all for doing that. I'll also throw it out there too. I have, if you'd like a signed copy of the Quantum Sayings of Jesus or a signed copy of the Quantum Gospel of Mary or in any of my other books, if you live in the United States, they're $25. So if you want one, let me know. You can contact me on social media and let me know. Or you can email me, keith@quire.com. That's KEITH @QUOIR.com. And let me know. And you can, take care of that via PayPal or Venmo, whatever. And I'll be happy to sign a copy and mail it out to you. And I think that's all we got for today. So again, thank you for listening to Second Cup with Keith. I do appreciate it. Thank you for your comments and your support. I appreciate it more than you know. And I do hope to do more of these posts going forward. So again, thank you for your patience. Those of you who are fans of Second Cup with Keith, man, you people are what should I say? A faithful bunch of people. You've hung in there, been very patient, and I very much appreciate that. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on Second Cup with Keith. Take care.